coffee with Mom and Dad. My name is Todd, and this is my wife Valerie.
Hello.
We're just two average parents answering questions and concerns that folks may have out there. Today we want to discuss a little something that's been on the internet lately. It's a while back I was talking to a gentleman about socialism and Bernie Sanders and all this political rise of the socialist agenda and everything, and the young man said that that if Bernie Sanders was running for president and Jesus was here on earth, that Jesus might vote for Bernie Sanders. And I thought to myself, no, Jesus would probably want Bernie Sanders to vote for him. And you know, the reality is that if Christ was here today, he'd probably want us to vote for him and make him king. But anyway, I wanted to tackle this question that people seem to have: is socialism Christian, or is it a Christian thing? And I just wanted to look at one aspect of that, and that's the estate tax, and where that's going to take our society. And believe it or not, these are relevant issues. These are issues that we have to deal with every day. You know, these are issues you're going to have to deal with, especially if Bernie or Hillary. Okay, let's face it, Bernie's just more honest about who he is than Hillary. But these are issues that you're going to have to deal with every day, because they're issues that are going to deal with your everyday life. So, honey, what do you think about this whole socialism and the state tax and all that?
I just think the fact that we're having to talk about it is mind-blowing in school, you know, and this is a public school. You know, we learned what socialism was, we learned what communism was, and, you know, 4 years ago, when we talked to that group of communists/socialists downtown, they kept using the terms interchangeably, and I finally asked the guy. They were passing out communist newspapers, and they said they were socialists. And I asked him, I said, you keep using the terms interchangeably, which are you? And he said, well, you know, we're communists. He said, we use the word socialist because it's more acceptable in society, but the ultimate goal is always communism. And he said, you know, really the terms are interchangeable, and those were his words.
Yeah. And you know, I think a lot of people don't understand what socialism is or communism is anymore. We've kind of blurred the lines. You know, and a lot of times I think it's birthed out of covetousness, how folks oftentimes they'll say, well, you know, I want universal health care and I want all this stuff, and they're not realizing that somebody has to pay for this stuff. You know, a while back I was talking to somebody and they said, well, let's just let the 1% pay for that. But the reality is if we applied all the finances of the 1% to America's debt alone, it still wouldn't pay our debt. And so to say that the 1% is going to pay for our health care and food stamps and all that kind of thing, and pay our debt, is just, that's far-fetched. It's not going to happen. The reality is that if we live in a country, or if we give our country the power to tackle the 1%, or the so-called 1%, if we give them the power to tackle the most powerful people in the world, this so-called 1%, well then, that also gives them the power to go after the weak too. We got to think about stuff like that. You know, we need to start thinking things through. One of the things I was thinking about, you know, is Jesus' stance on what we would call the estate tax. You know, a lot of these socialists, including Bernie, believe in what we would call an estate tax or a death tax. Others would call it death tax or whatever. And that's simply, it goes kind of like this. A guy works all of his life to build something for his family. You know, he works all of his life, you know, buying his home. He works all of his life, you know, putting money aside for his children. Important things. And then all of a sudden he has a stroke and he dies. Well, the government comes in and takes anywhere from 65% to 90% of everything he's earned, and his kids have to split up the rest. Now, you need to ask yourself, if you were the child having to split up the rest of that estate tax, would that be something that you would consider to be fair? You know, socialism, and by the way, if a Republican believes in estate tax and stuff, then that Republican's a socialist. Amen. But, you know, one of the things that Jesus had said about the estate tax, believe it or not, he confronts this issue in Luke 12, 13 through 14. And a man comes to him, and a man asks him, he says, hey, convince my brother to split the inheritance with me. Jesus just simply looks at the man and says, who made me a judge or a divider over you? You know, Jesus did not believe in an estate tax. That's very clear. All the way through the Old Testament, they were to mark their inheritance, and they would put markers on their land, and you know, that was so that they could have a mark of where their land was, so they could keep what was theirs. You know, it's very important. It's also very important that when men give, that they're giving out of the kindness of their own heart, rather than being forced to give. You know, if you're being forced to give to the poor, come on. You know, that's always going to turn bad when you're forcing a whole society of people to give to the poor. You know, what do you think about all that?
I think as far as giving to the poor, I mean, giving versus being taken from to give is very different. The Bible has a huge precedent for giving to the poor. He had an entire system for helping the poor out, and it's not what we're seeing in socialism at all. In fact, even the women were encouraged to reach out their hands to the poor. In Proverbs 31 woman. So it's one of the things that she had more time to do, was she was not working full time trying to raise a family at the same time. That she had time to do more of these type of things. And you know, as Christians, yes, we need to care about the poor. The Bible has tons to say about that. The Bible never says to go and take from somebody, give to the poor. That's not what it teaches at all.
And we might be discussing this issue later on down the road, but you know, the reality is that every one of us should have a heart's desire to give from a heart. But you know, it's very clear that we ought to make sure that our families are taken care of. You know, and if a man chooses to take care of his family better than another man, then that's his prerogative. You know, and we ought not to mess with other people's families. You think, well, how does this affect me? Where does this become relevant? Well, being about $19 trillion in debt and having to pay for other people's health care, other people's food stamps who won't get a job, or spend their life, you know, in a mediocre job or whatever, having to pay for somebody's education. At some point, you know, you've got to figure out where all that money's going to come from. You know, all this is very relevant to us for today. So.
The thing I always thought was kind of interesting was when they were doing this whole 1%, the protests, and first started traveling, and they were doing all these protests, and they weren't real clear on what they were trying to get to. I think for a lot of people it's obvious what they were trying to get to, but what I always thought was interesting was the group that was complaining about the 1% and what they were doing and what they believed. It was the same group that's constantly telling people, follow your heart, do what makes you happy. What do you think these people were doing? Why do you think that they crush people under their feet to get power and to get money? Because that's what they want. You know, that is the human heart.
You're talking about the 1%.
The 1%, yeah.
Right,
That's
right.
They're doing the very thing that the people who don't like them are telling people to do. Think about that.
You know, the reality is, I think what we need to do is we all need to step back and start thinking with a little bit of common sense about the human heart.
Yes.
You know, and very clear, you know, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? You know, let's face it. If we all were born with a heart that was good in the sense of, well, I want to go out and do good works and do good for people and do all these good things, well, then the world would be a different place. But the truth is, it's
6,000 years of history.
we have a deceitful heart, and it deceives us into believing that we're a whole lot better off, or we're a better person than we really are. And we need to come to the reality that we need to conquer our own issues in our life. I want to encourage you, to really look this year with the elections coming up, and I'm not telling you who to vote for. There's some people that I wouldn't vote for, Bernie or Trump, but I am telling you to really cautiously look at the candidates and what they actually believe about these issues, because the substance of what they believe is what you're going to have to deal with after they get in the office. And so I want to encourage you, and I want to also encourage you to investigate the Bible and see what Jesus really believed about socialism. Because just because he tells somebody to sell everything they have and give to the poor, doesn't mean he's forcing them to do it. And it doesn't mean that the money's going into his hands. So there's some food for thought, but, I just want to encourage you, and I also just want to let you know, today we're drinking, I think we're drinking a generic brand of coffee today, aren't we? I don't know what it is. But we got some Coffee Mate here and all that kind of stuff. And if you want to send us some coffee.
I think it is a name brand. Beaumont.
That's Aldi's.
Aldi's.
Huh? Aldi's, okay.
So it's an Aldi's brand. But if you want to send us some coffee to try, I'd love it, man. I like coffee. But send us some coffee to try, and we'll try it out here and tell you what we think. But
yes, I want to remind you guys to, if you like the videos, to share them, to like them, and subscribe to our channel. When we get a new video out, we'll let you know. We're trying to put out one a day, 5 days a week, and for those of you Christians, pray for us. Come on. You're filming this?